Three, two, one. Here we come. Better late than never, they say, Sebastian. Sorry for the technical difficulties, you guys. We use a restream platform and having a bit of trouble with Sebastian's password today. So we got you in the draft with you there, Sebastian. You brought the whole group. Every time I watch your program, I feel like there's more swag in the background there. So it's great to see. I got to do some upgrading on my set, but always nice to have you on the program. You're a longtime friend of mine and the channel, and obviously going into the holiday season, great time to reconnect, talk about what we saw in 2024 and then our outlook for 2025. So thanks for coming, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. You guys have been also great friends of mine for a long time. You and Anthony's on vacation right now. So Anthony, enjoy the vacation. I need a vacation here coming up also. It's been a crazy year, and I'm sure it's going to be crazy in 2025 even.
Yeah, hopefully it'll slow down at some point. We'll have a big run in 2025. We'll take off on our yachts or something together for a nice little vacation there at the end of the year. Maybe not a yacht, maybe a rowboat, Sebastian, you and I can pool together for. Hey, I put together some slides. We've got a slide for all 16 miners. I have the Bitcoin price, mid-morning market update. I know the miners have turned a corner here. We're starting to see some green across the board. CleanSpark is definitely one that's coming on strong here. They came out with a big convertible note update and news. So maybe we can start there, Sebastian. That's a fan favorite. What are your thoughts right now on CleanSpark? How are you positioning yourself heading into 2025 for this company?
Yeah, so CleanSpark, I was trying to buy some more last week, didn't get a chance to do it, but I'll be buying more on dips if we have dips. But I definitely think the news story that came out yesterday with them being now fully funded to 50 exahash plus. They bought back some shares, 11 point something million shares bought back. What else did they do there? There's just a lot of good news in that report there for us, where they also said that they're funded to HODL more as well going forward. We don't know what the length of that is going to be, whether it's going to be 6 months to a year, but I think it's all good news going forward for us. And the big thing is no dilution happening here for the next possibly 6 months to a year, right? That should give the stock some breathing room and should help it run up here a little bit. And it is doing that today. It's up right now, 6%. And it is leading the pack a little bit here. So I'm still going to be holding on to my shares, see where it goes into 2025, but I think we're going to go up much higher from where we are right now.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I want to talk about the dilution point. It's interesting you bring that up, Sebastian. So they came out with this convertible note. As you say, they allocated a portion of that, 145 million, to repurchase just about 12 million shares. So this is obviously great as a shareholder. I feel the share price of CleanSpark is depressed. We were at 25 bucks earlier in the year. This is a great opportunity to take some shares off the market. Almost 180-degree turn from the ATM activity we've seen throughout the year. So what do you think this means? Does this mark kind of the end of that dilution that we've seen in 2024 for CleanSpark? Or do you think this is just kind of a timely move with interest rates right now?
Well, I think, they don't pay any interest rates on it. It's 0% for them until 2030. So they're not the only ones that are pulling on this and going with the secured, well, it's not really secured debt, it's convertible notes. But we saw Marathon do this, Riot, Cypher has done this, TeraWulf has done this as well, Hut 8 is doing this. So they're all kind of going into this kind of funding round, more or less, you could say. Marathon has done it twice, I think, now. So could we see CleanSpark do it again in a couple months? Possibly. Could we see others do it as well? And instead of using the ATM, they're just kind of pushing the ball down the road a little bit into 2030, 2035, maybe even later on. So that's one way to get funding, but they're going to need funding if they want to continue to grow. All these guys are, unless we have, I think, there's a slim possibility that we might have an extended cycle where Bitcoin goes up for 2 years, 3 years maybe. And then at that point, the miners can definitely do much better because they're going to be generating a lot more revenue. It's going to be more steady for them instead of these huge ups and downs that we've seen historically with them. And that could help them out where they can actually fund the growth that way as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up. Now, I know we jumped right into CleanSpark, obviously very topical with the news that came out. If we zoom out to the mid-morning market update here, Sebastian, CleanSpark, as you said, up over 6%. I believe you said it's a little bit higher now. Anything standing out on this board? I know we've been talking about Bitdeer quite a bit on our channel. That was one that really shone strong in Q4. Hut 8 was another very strong contender. Anything you've been covering on your channel or kind of popping out to you on this board?
No, nothing out of the ordinary. The guys that are getting the HPC potential there, Hut 8, Wolf, Bitdeer, they've been running pretty well here in the last, you could say, 6 months. Cypher, same thing. And then the rest of the guys that are more pure play miners have been kind of underperforming, lagging actually, compared to those peers, which we would have thought that would have been the opposite. But HPCI was something that has come along this year, which we didn't have last cycle, and it was kind of out of nowhere. And that definitely drew a lot of the money funds going into those instead of some of the other ones. And I think eventually we'll get a repricing on some of the ones that haven't run up yet, because they're just so undervalued right now. And then if Bitcoin goes to 250,000, 200,000, wherever it might be, they're just going to be, swimming in profits at that point.
Yeah. Now we'll come on to Bitcoin price in a second here. I've got the graph. I'm curious to get your predictions for next year. And we'll talk about our Q1 Miner Madness 2.0, we're calling it. But in terms of the share price here and market cap specifically, Sebastian, we've talked about this a lot on our channel. We've seen some very interesting moves in market cap this year. We've included MicroStrategy as we're now comparing this to a lot of the Bitcoin miner proxies. But in terms of the far right column there, market cap, you can see Bitdeer almost catching up with CleanSpark. Riot has now surpassed CleanSpark. Can you talk to us a little bit about this jockeying you're seeing? What do you see in terms of the big miners moving into 2025?
Well, I think the valuation is going to go much higher from where they are right now, especially if we still believe that miners will do at least a 3 to 5x. So, if we're looking at CleanSpark being at $4.5 billion right now, or 3.8 billion, sorry, that one, could go to 15 to 20 billion before everything is said and done. Same thing with the other ones. And that's something we were talking about earlier this year with in the community and things like that is, could the miners in general become valued at 200 billion combined, more or less? And I still think that might be a possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you start to think about the Bitcoin adoption, the strategic reserve, these miners essentially become the mint. They're the only place you can make new currency or make new Bitcoin, not to mention all of the network benefits they provide. So I also think their market caps could significantly go up in the next 18 months here, Sebastian. Now, in terms of Bitcoin price itself, I know it's been a couple months since we've had you on. This was quite an aggressive run. We saw up to the $100,000 barrier. Where do you see Bitcoin price by end of year and then moving into next year?
By end of year, I think we're still going to be somewhere between 110 and 120,000. I'd be surprised if we go above that, but you never know with Bitcoin. Some good news happens where U.S. puts it on the strategic reserve faster, which I don't think is going to happen. You need laws passed to do that. So other countries could do it. That could be a catalyst that drives it up higher. But otherwise, I think, 110, 120 should be a good number to go by. I said for our competition, 113,000. Well, we're pretty close to that right now. We'll see how close we end up by the end of the year. And we'll see how it goes going into 2025.
Yeah, you had 113,000 on Miner Madness. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that one up too, actually, on that topic, Sebastian. We're putting together Miner Madness 2.0, so hopefully you can be contestant in that one as well. This one's going to kick off January 10th, you guys, so make sure you get your picks in on the yellow thumbnail picture here. The video went out yesterday. We've got some great swag as well, Sebastian. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Knee-jerk reaction here. I know this is the first time you're seeing the Miner Madness 2.0 competition, but what are your three top picks right now for Q1?
For Q1, I'm sticking with the ones that I have right now, which are CleanSpark, IREN, excuse me, and Bitfarms as well. I think those guys are still way undervalued from them where they should be. And I think at that point, we'll see if it turns out that way, but they should do much better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like IREN, CleanSpark for sure as the big dominant players. I do wish IREN had the HODL strategy, but who knows? Time may change that. Now, you mentioned Bitfarms as well. We have a question actually about Bitfarms here, so maybe we'll jump to them next, Sebastian.
Sure.
This came up in our interview with Jason last night, talking about their position in Bitfarms, 20% shareholder, largest individual shareholder.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, this is Bit Digital. Let me grab Bitfarms. And they've also came out with some news this morning we covered in relation to the amendment restating of their ATM program, kind of as a byproduct of the Stronghold merger. So Curious to get your thoughts on Bitfarms. This is one that struggled. It was actually the third most selected company in Q4 in the Miner Madness. However, they struggled during the quarter, really based on, we feel like that missed target at the mid-year point.
Yeah, I agree. I think the missed target of getting 12 exahash by the end of Q3, that didn't help them out. And then them kind of pushing back the targets to get to 21 exahash by they were supposed to get by the end of the year, now towards like the end of first half of next year. That wasn't a good look either. So it was just a couple of things that played into it. Plus, they've been just beaten down so much from other news in the past as well. And yeah, it just hasn't been a great stock so far. But they still have a lot of growth in them. They're still trying to get to 21 exahash. They're going to be getting Stronghold acquisition. They can do possibly good things there going forward. So there's still, I think, a lot of good catalysts going for them forward, as long as they can just execute on their growth plans.
Yeah, it's been difficult. Bitfarms is one that I hold as well. I have options and shares. Now, the interesting thing here, they've hovered around that $2 price. And I know when when Riot came out with that acquisition or potential acquisition, they had gone in just north of $2. A lot of people really struggled with that price, including you and I, Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
Bitfarms now still in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
What is your price target on this company?
Well, I think they should be, I mean, just now, based on their operations, what they're generating in revenue, they should be like 2x at least from where they are right now, if they were fairly valued with everybody else. But they're not. They're definitely getting heavily discounted, shorted as well. So will that flip eventually? I sure hope so. Right? Time will only tell if that's the case, but I still own a lot of shares in them, and I want them to do really well. And I think just going forward, they need to execute. If they can do that, then things will look better for them.
Now, Bitfarms is one of the companies that is based outside of the US. Do you think re-domiciling or moving their headquarters to the States? We've heard that from Bit Digital, Bitfarms, a number of these companies. Do you think that would act as a catalyst for them or not so much?
I think so. We've seen that before with Hut 8 getting re-domiciled right after the merger with USBTC last year. That, I mean, you saw what the stock has done here, plus getting investments and things like that. That definitely helps out. So I think there is some benefit to being US based, as there is a lot more capital than you could get into put on the indices as well, and other things. So I think that might be probably a wise move for them going forward, along with, I think IREN's also looking into that as well. So
yeah, interesting you bring them up. I was going to mention IREN because you said they're another one of your top picks. This is one of my top picks and top holds as well. You talk about execution, hitting targets, just unbelievable growth this year. I wanted to get your take on IREN and the HODL versus no HODL debate, Sebastian, especially now as we're seeing companies that have nothing to do with Bitcoin starting to adopt Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's a real head scratcher for me that all of these miners don't at least hold it instead of cash.
yeah, I mean, there's maybe two ways to look at it with the miners that don't HODL, and there's a couple of them that don't do that. You got IREN, you got Wolf. Who else is? There's another one that doesn't HODL, a Core. At least I think they don't HODL. They don't report anything. But the reason that they don't HODL is they use that cash to fund their growth and maybe dilute less on shareholders. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Would I like to see them HODL more during like the bull run that we're getting into, and maybe before, closer to the halving event? Yeah, I think there's a time and place to do a HODL, and they might be missing out on that a little bit, especially if they were HODLing more so back when Bitcoin was still at 50,000, 60,000, and it's already up by 100,000. They could be up nicely on that to then use those funds to grow even in the bear market if we get one.
Gotcha. Now, with IREN itself, obviously the most efficient fleet in the entire world, I think, basically brand new fleet. They've also got 30 exahash. This looks to be a powerhouse right at the perfect time going into this bull run. What are you seeing about IREN that you're so excited about right now?
Just their growth and execution. That's been the big play for me this whole time, is growth and execution. If you can execute on your growth, you're going to do very well, especially in the bull run. The only thing that kind of had me scratching my head a little bit was their operations for November. They weren't that great. On average, they were down in hash rate. And they did point out that they did curtail a little bit, and then also had maybe some issues with the T21. So I want to get a little bit more clarification from Dan and company there, what they can provide that as far as what's going on with those machines, how many do they have that are having issues with, and all that stuff.
Yeah. T21s are seeming to be troublesome. I know Ben and Bitfarms had an issue with those. He came out originally saying they were great. They were outperforming what they saw in the box.
Yep.
And it seems now over time, these T21s are becoming more and more of a problem.
Yeah.
Now, we talk about growth, execution. Obviously, there can be things said about Riot's operational hash rate percentage. However, Corsicana is quite a sight to be seen. This is a massive facility. They have grown tremendously this year. Now they've come out with a convertible note strategy and just YOLO'd it all into Bitcoin.
Yep.
So I'm curious to get your thoughts on Riot as well. This is another big player in the space that Anthony and I like a lot.
Yeah, Riot has been doing a lot better here recently. You can see it in their average operational uptime and everything else. That is improving month over month. So that is a good sign. Jason has said on your guys' channel that they should be operating at closer to 95% uptime. So we need to hold him to his word on that. Can they get closer to 95% uptime? If they do, that is going to be fantastic for not only the company, but also for the shareholders, because then they're going to be generating more Bitcoin, which is in the end what we really need to do. So I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing here with Riot here recently in the last couple of months. Improvements overall. The HODL has been great for them nonetheless, and they just bought more. I don't know how I still feel about companies buying Bitcoin when they can especially mine it at a much lower cost. We'll see how that plays out for them and everybody else, especially now that you have more avenues where you can get Bitcoin. You can get it on the ETFs. You can get it through MicroStrategy if you wanted to that way, which has a lot more HODL than any of these guys do. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm interested about that as well. The other question I had for you, the HODL decision in my mind is the easy part. The difficult decision is when to start dipping in or selling that HODL. So Jason came out last night and said, hey, look, we're not trying to adopt a MicroStrategy playbook. We just saw this as an opportunistic, basically swing trade, I guess, on Bitcoin that they can use to finance the business later. What is your opinion, Sebastian, as someone who follows CleanSpark very closely, Riot, some of these companies, Marathon, big HODLs, when do they start separating themselves or selling some of this Bitcoin, if ever?
Well, I think CleanSpark's done the best job in the last cycle where they were selling it towards the peak and then into the bear market as well. And this time around, they've been HODLing more, I would say, heavily than they have in the past, where they're HODLing pretty much everything that they mine. And I get that. Okay, Bitcoin's going to be going up. You're going to do very well with it. But again, we want to see them sell that to then fund their growth going forward. They don't have to sell all of it. I'd like to see them, maybe sell a portion, a half of it, whatever it might be. I think that would be great. That way that reduces the dilution that we're going to see on shareholders to build out, because you're going to need to change out your machines in another year or two anyways. You have to spend capital on it there. You have to grow more. So use that cash that you have there to fund it, right? Try to dilute the shareholders a little bit less. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And then if you look at like Marathon has historically just been hodling everything that they can for the most part. Yes, they sold through a couple months last year and into this year a little bit, but for the most part, they've been hodling everything that they can and diluting shareholders because of it. So I'm not a big fan of doing that, especially if you're going to hodl through the bear market. You're not going to do anything with it. You're just having Bitcoin sit there for no good reason other than losing value on it. So there is a time and place where you should be selling it, I think, and a time and place when you should be buying it as well.
Yeah, really good points. Now, I know it's your lunch hour here, Sebastian. We want to get into some rapid fire questions. So you guys let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Get your questions in there. Hit the like button. We're up over 80 viewers now. So we'll get into some rapid fire. Sebastian, I know you give out price targets as part of your analysis. That's one of the best features, I think, of what you do online there. Do you have specific price targets for Bitfarms, Riot, and do you think they will double from here?
Oh, yeah. As long as Bitcoin goes to like 150,000, 200,000, yeah, they should double easily, if not do even better than that. So, yeah, I still think Bitfarms by the end of the cycle could get to like $10, if not more, as long as they don't have any more FUD or anything like that, and they can get to their targets within the next 6 months. I think that might be possible with them. Riot, I think, should definitely do much better here going forward, especially if they're able to operate the way that they have been here in the last couple months. Their operations have been better. It's better uptime, better everything else. So that's improving. They should be mining more Bitcoin as well as times progress, and they're also growing. So yeah.
Now, in terms of Bitcoin price, you threw out 150, 100,000 there. This almost came quicker than I had thought post-election, and obviously on the backs of some big macro catalysts. Where do you see the price of Bitcoin for this cycle top here, Sebastian? And when do you think that will be?
Originally, I thought it's going to be around 180,000, and this is going back now almost a year plus. Based on the calculations I could see from previous cycles where we were going and just the increases that we could see, I was thinking 180,000 was going to be right around the top. But that was before we had Trump being elected, him having a mandate and talk about putting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. So once that all came out, it's like, oh, that might be a little bit too conservative at that point. And now I'm thinking maybe we could go like to 250,000 this cycle. But could it be that we have an extended cycle, like I said before, where we go up for 2 to 3 years, and then this year we could go to maybe 180,000, or I'm talking about next year, 2025, go up to 180,000, and then in 2026 go to like 250,000. I don't know when that time frame is going to be, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on it. Would I love to see another cycle happen where we peak out at 250,000 by September, October, and then fall back down 50%. Heck yeah, I'd like to repeat this process again, buying the bear market on these guys. So
Yeah.
But we'll see. If we get an extended cycle, it'll definitely be different, and the miners might actually run up even more.
It's so funny you bring that up. That's the exact dilemma you have. You and I have our price targets, our plans before the bull cycle starts. Then we get in the bull cycle. I'm doing the same thing, Sebastian. I had committed to selling 20% at $95,000 Bitcoin. And same as you, I saw so many changes to my thesis, to the world, to the macro environment. I had to revise that upward. But it's a dangerous game because every other cycle, that's exactly what happens to the general masses. They think, hey, this is going on forever. It's extended. This is the time. And then that's when everyone gets hurt. So with that being said, my question to you is, in general, what is your exit strategy for these miners?
I still think originally I was going to start kind of exiting like you were, around 100,000 on Bitcoin. But now I'm thinking maybe closer to 150, 175,000 in Bitcoin. I'm going to start slowly dollar cost averaging out 5% here, 5% there, taking profits on it, making sure I have profits locked in. Not like last time, everybody's saying Bitcoin's going to 100,000. We got to 69,000. We fell back down. So lesson learned. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try to take profits this time, but it's going to be a slow process to get those because I don't know where the top's going to be. And the reason I don't know where the top's going to be is because it is such a different cycle all around. Nation states buying it, states buying it, countries buying it. I mean, companies buying it. It's crazy what we're seeing right now. The adoption that's happening is unseen, I guess, in this whole cycle that we've been through the last, 13, 14 years.
It most definitely is. It's wild to see this happen. We talked about that as well with the ETFs and the amount of money that's flowing in here. We're not feeling like we're going to see as drastic of pullbacks because there's just so much capital to flush into the market. Now, this is a good question from Fuelman 911. I know you're a big fan of both channels. Talking about TeraWulf. So wants to get Paul on, talk about the no hodl. That's a great idea. We'll reach out. In terms of TeraWulf itself, are you surprised we have not seen an HPC announcement yet?
I am a little bit, right? They came out saying that they're going to have at least one guaranteed announcement here. So the days are ticking. We got a couple more days here in the year before it's all said and done, with trading days at least. So they need to come out with something there. And if they don't, what is it going to do for the stock? I don't know. But they really do need to have a really good customer there or a deal in place to warrant the valuation that they have right now based on the potential there.
So I want to take this a little bit further. TeraWulf is one we've seen their market cap grow exponentially this year. They have a great mining operation. However, they did peel off the Nautilus facility, which was the 2.1 cent power. So I wanted to ask you now, based on what we just said, hey, we expect an HPC deal within the year. What do you think will happen to share price if we don't get that announcement by year end here?
It might fall. There still might be enough hope that they do get something, maybe not by the end of the year, but maybe within the first month or two of the new year. But it also depends on what kind of deal is it going to be. Is it going to be a deal for $5 million, $10 million a year in revenue from HPCI? Or is it going to be something similar to what Bit Digital is getting, like 100 million, right? That is going to also dictate what the stock does, I think. If it's a great deal, then the stock might continue to be where it's at or go higher. But if it's a small deal, then the stock could possibly fall. Unless they really provide some good guidance there that they're going to be increasing that, continually.
Well, that's the thing, right? We saw Core Scientific come out with the 500 megawatt kind of blockbuster deal. Everyone's going to be benchmarking and comparing to that. Core Scientific, we think, is a great buy right now as well, Sebastian, just based on the revenue projections there. You can see they're trading at $16. We figure that's a $20 company just based on the HPC portion alone. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on Core as well as one of these HPC kind of main players.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Core's ever since that deal came out, they have been just kind of steadily going up. While even some miners were going down, depending where Bitcoin's going, but they've been steadily just going up. It's more of I wouldn't say it's like a rocket ship going up, but it's just a steady climb up for them. And I think it's going to continue to go that way just as they get closer to actually start generating revenue from that Core Weave deal that should be in sometime towards the end of the first half. And after that, they could come out with other things. They're going to have so much optionality at that point because they're going to be making. But to begin with, it's going to be $250 million a year after they give back the discounts for the loans. So, and after that, it's going like to $400, $500 million a year in revenue. They can do anything they want at that point.
Pretty wild, hey, having that amount of secured revenue for 12 years.
Yeah.
Think about the flexibility that gives you as an operating team. Now, this was a really good question, actually. Let me just find it. Okay, so we just made a BitChain 82. We just made the point that we think either this cycle may be extended or the pullbacks, the drawdowns may not be as severe just because of the adoption, the amount of money that's in here, the volume. I know the more volume obviously helps as well. Do you think, based on this statement, this broad adoption, is this the last cycle, or did we just see the last cycle that kind of follows that 4-year boom and bust?
Well, that's what we're gonna wait and find out. We won't know until we're past it or through it. So we'll find out sometime next year, late next year, and early into 2026 if this is an extended cycle. We won't know unless we're going through it. Historically, yes, Bitcoin has peaked right around September, October, maybe November timeframe after the halving event a year out, and then we went down, right? For about a year and a half to 2 years, we went down in price. If we don't get that, I mean, we could get it where Bitcoin only goes down 20, 30%. And then slowly continues to go up as we have continued adoption. More people are buying it, putting on their books, more companies, things like that. So that will, yeah, I mean, it's too early to tell right now, but we will definitely see in about a year or so.
Most definitely. Yeah, time will tell, as we like to say on our channel. You're not warranting a guess on that one, eh, Sebastian?
As far as, are we going to get an extended cycle?
Yeah, you're a wait and show me type of answer there.
That one is, I'm starting to lean more towards that it might be a possibility, only because we have the big guys in it, BlackRock, Fidelity, others as well. They're going to try and, squeeze it as hard as they can for as long as they can. Similar to what we kind of saw with gold ETFs when they came out. If you recall those, gold was kind of, flat for a while, but then the ETFs came out and boom, they had a multi-year cycle where they were going up. So could we see the same thing with Bitcoin? Possibly.
Yeah, I'm following the exact same feelings as you, Sebastian. And the thing I saw actually on Simply Bitcoin that was interesting, in prior cycles, this was like retail investors, right? These were guys like us that had put money in. This is life-changing money. We want to buy whatever we need for our life, or cars or houses. The people that are investing with the pensions, the BlackRocks, the ETFs, they're not guys pulling this money out to go buy a new dress or wardrobe or car or whatever on the weekend. These are long-term institutional fundamental investors. They're not going to be ups and downs like that watching the day-to-day trade. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway just on the type of investors now as well in this space.
Yep.
Good question. Everton FC, afternoon from the UK. Love the show. Wondering about Soluna. We just covered some news with them this morning about a new financing option. This one's really interesting to me. I don't know how much you cover that. Do you cover them, Sebastian?
I covered them in the last cycle when they were still growing, but then they got into financial trouble and then they got a new CEO. So they're doing much better from what I can tell than they were back then, which is good. And they're partnering with a lot of people, which I'm a little on the fence on that, but I think they're doing the right things.
So 2 questions here. So one, I don't know how much you know about them, but they operate behind the meter with a lot of sustainable wind farms, stuff like that, which there are tons of those type of operations around North America. You may not find 500 megawatt wind farm, but there's a ton of sustainable renewable energy that's just being dumped because they can't store it when it's not being needed. So Marathon went in, they bought a wind farm. So my first question is, number one, what do you think of the Soluna business model by focusing on these small stranded pockets of energy, partnering with renewable companies, now that one of the behemoths, Marathon, has done just that?
Yeah, well, Marathon did it for a different reason, right? They did it for their retirement of older machines. So it was a retirement project for the old A6 to go in and have a couple more years worth of life and before they get tossed out or recycled. So that's their kind of approach to it, which I think is a good approach, especially with the older machines. Soluna, on the other hand, they're doing like trying to do a tier 3 data centers. They're trying to do also Bitcoin mining. Mostly, I think they do hosting mostly now. I don't know how much they have left in soft mining, but they're partnering also with people to do those types of things. And if it works out for them that, they can get at a pretty low cost on electricity there and helps them in their bottom line, all the power to them. And, I hope it works out for them.
Now, in terms of Soluna, they gave out a great slide here on screen talking about their power portfolio. So this is another trend we've seen in the industry this year, Sebastian. Companies coming out talking about this pipeline of power. So Soluna has come out and actually ranked or graded this projects based on the probability and the different stages. So you can see shovel ready, active term negotiation, so on and so forth. I wanted to get your take on these power pipelines we're starting to hear, specifically Soluna's, but in general, what we can expect when we hear Bitdeer has 2.6 gigawatts or IREN has a 1.4 gigawatt facility. What does this mean to these companies?
I mean, right now it means optionality for them going forward if they can capitalize on those, right? I know some of these guys are still in early talks to get that, but some already have it. Like Bitdeer, I believe, has that already in place. So does IREN as well, and that just gives them possibly leverage going forward as well. They could use it for Bitcoin mining? They could use it for HPC data centers. There's a couple things they can do with it. So I think it's definitely a benefit for them to have that, especially if they got it in at a much lower cost than what we're seeing now being asked on some of these sites.
Yeah, makes sense. Guys, feel free to throw your questions in here. We'll continue to go through the miners based on kind of the most popular ones. Marathon's another one we just mentioned there. You talked about them trying to get a little more life out of some of their machines. So Marathon has come on very strong here. Pretty strong production month we felt in November. They've come out with the convertible note strategy and are now holding a tremendous amount of Bitcoin on balance sheet. So number one, are you holding Marathon? And secondly, what's your thoughts on them?
Currently, I'm not holding Marathon. I am looking to possibly add Marathon, kind of like Riot as well. The reason for that is I want to see their continuation of this uptime that they've had in November. November was fantastic for them. They were operating at like over 100% uptime, which is unheard of. I don't know if it's because of the two-pick immersion that they were using there, two-phase immersion cooling that they're using to overclock the machines there possibly. But they also got to 50 exahash, I think, already as well. So they've been doing really well this year as far as growth is concerned. Their operations have suffered as of last year in December. If you recall, in December, they had 1,800 Bitcoin mined, and then they fell off the cliff in January, February. So it wasn't a great year for operational uptime for them, but it is improving now. So I'm looking forward to see how they do going forward, at least another month or two, and then I may buy some shares of Marathon as well if we're still in a good cycle spot.
Now, you said same strategy as Riot, so I take it you're not holding Riot right now?
Correct.
And what kind of confirmation are you looking for? Just month to month, like back to back months or a quarter, or what level of confirmation, number of months do you need to see this maintained?
Yeah, I'd like to see at least 2 to 3 months, I think. If I can get that and we see the continuation of the improvements in the uptime or just consistency in the uptime, that'll be huge for me.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, now another company I'm interested to get your thoughts on is Bit Digital. This is another one we scratch our heads, Sebastian. Massive balance sheet, great Ethereum strategy. They've got the HPC. Share price just does not seem to be picking up.
No,
Again, we talk about the redomicile effect here. What do you think is holding Bit Digital back?
I think in the past it was their asset light approach. Maybe that held them back in the past for Bitcoin mining, right? They've also haven't updated their miners here in the past year. They have older machines also. So I think that maybe held them back, but they still had a great customer there that was generating close to $100 million in revenue for them from HPC AI. Which they didn't really get any love for that. It didn't seem like they got a little bit of love, but not as much as I would have thought they would have gotten. Yeah, their balance sheet is fantastic. They have Ethereum HODL as well, and maybe could the Ethereum HODL be something that's maybe throwing some people off? Maybe a lot of people here are Bitcoin maxis, right? They want to have Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which they do also. Um, and then recently they just bought a company out in Canada, right? That's got tier 3 data centers. They have a pipeline of things happening for them there, and they're getting customers there. So they're doing all the right things. And are they being valued properly? No, I don't think they are. Um, it, I don't know if it would take for them to split the businesses up for, HPCI and Bitcoin, separate those out. Maybe if that would have an impact on one of the stock prices there, possibly. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm scratching my head on that one also the whole year because they're not being valued on Bitcoin mining or their HPC business as well.
Yeah, the only angle I see is just they're not overly vertically integrated. I know Sam's talked about wanting to buy their own data centers for HPC, but it seems this year the big prize was the PPAs, the land, the power agreements, of which Bit Digital, based on their strategy, maybe didn't have the same exposure as some of the other miners. Fuelman asked another question for you here, Sebastian. Top three holds. I think you said Bitfarms, IREN, and CleanSpark. Was that right?
Yeah, CleanSpark is my largest, then IREN, and then Bitfarms.
Now, when you think about position sizing and averaging in and out, dollar cost averaging, how do you structure this in terms of like percentage of your portfolio? How much will you allocate to one individual company?
It depends on how I see their numbers looking. So if somebody's doing better than, so I try to weigh more on that. Operations, uptime, all that stuff. The one that has better metrics, if you could say, on those things, I'll put more money into it than the other ones. So I was putting a lot more into CleanSpark and Bitfarms in the beginning, prior to getting into IREN last year, right around this time, November, December. And that was just because IREN was kind of slow growing there. They also returned a bunch of machines in 2022, I believe it was, that they defaulted on through their special purpose vehicles. So I wanted to see how they do going forward before I start, loading the boat out with it. And then once they got to the point where they said we're getting 21 exahash early and getting the 30 exahash by the end of the year, I'm like, okay, this is the time to get into them.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of did a little reshuffling in my positions.
Yeah, you really like the big exahash growth. Hey, you're a Bitcoin miner, true and true.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because in the end, just think about it. If they can get to the 30 exahash or 40 exahash, wherever they get to, and Bitcoin's at 200,000, how much revenue does that actually generate for them if they can have really good uptime as well? And then, so the way I look at it is uptime is how fast can you pay off those machines? The better your uptime is, the faster you're going to be able to pay those things off.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I want to talk about Cypher as well, get your take on them. They're one who have a lot of growth for next year. But I'm curious, we put this slide out on Twitter last week, Sebastian, basically stating we feel the miners are going to surpass MicroStrategy in terms of percentage gain from here on out in the cycle. Obviously, MicroStrategy very strong in the early part of the cycle.
Yep.
My main argument was, yes, obviously, if the price of Bitcoin is below the cost to produce it, buying it is great. MicroStrategy did that well. Now that the price of Bitcoin is well above the cost of production, I think it makes a lot more sense to invest in companies that have access or exposure to that direct production, like the miners. I also think they're not being given a benefit on their HODL. Their fleets are going to appreciate. They've got the land value, correlated businesses, so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on this statement or this slide?
I would agree with you guys on this one. Yeah, I think MicroStrategy has had a nice run. Will it continue to run? I do think it will continue to run, but it got a little overheated here. And I said that when was getting to $500, like it's getting overheated. It's going to pull back. It just has to. It's just getting out of control. And sure enough, it did pull back. So we do see that for MicroStrategy from time to time where it gets a little over exuberant. It front runs Bitcoin quite a bit, and then it pulls back down to more reasonable prices. That's kind of what we're seeing right now with it. The miners, on the other hand, yes, they're not being really valued on their HODL. If you look at the HODL position that Marathon has, it's like 56% of their market cap is their HODL position, just in value by itself. So they're being valued 45% on their Bitcoin mining operations, which doesn't also make sense for me. So that I think that should be much lower in the percentage wise. So you're seeing that with the miners, and then the miners they can generate the revenue so well. The profits are so much better now than they were when Bitcoin was at 60,000. They should be getting repriced on that alone as well.
Now, a lot of people have said, okay, they're going to have to upgrade their fleets. They're going into a bear cycle. If your thesis or what we talked about earlier proves true, Sebastian, where this is either an extended cycle or a dramatically heightened cycle, these miners may be in a better position than a lot of people are thinking. The other thing that we've really been surprised at is the speed at which the mining rigs can improve their efficiency. So we've seen the Seal miner come out. Obviously, great strides they're making there, but these miners have effectively negated the halving just by the improvements we've seen in the hardware itself, eh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, last cycle we had machines that were 75, 80, 100 terahash machines that were getting online. Now we got 200, 250, even machines that are like 380 at terahash. So those are definitely having a huge impact. Plus the joules per terahash has come significantly down for them, and it's going to continue to do that. We're seeing that from Bitdeer coming out with machines eventually that will be like 5 joules per terahash. I'm sure Bitmain's not going to be far behind, if not leading that pack there also. And that's just the transition that we'll have from like 3 nanometers or down to 2 nanometers potentially. I think we're like maybe at 4 nanometers on the chips, but those are going to be coming down as well, which is going to have more improvements, excuse me, going forward.
So let's just paint this picture. Let's assume the market continues to rally here. We see some sort of an extended cycle. Bitcoin maybe hits 150, 200. And we start to get these extremely energy efficient machines. So the 5 joules per terahash. The other factor that's really nice is every one of these companies that moves over to HPC, that's less space and power they're allocating to Bitcoin, which is obviously great for the global hash rate and network. So I wanted to pick your brain, and then we'll come to Cypher here, Sebastian. In a rosy sky scenario here, everything works out like I just described. What are kind of your top stocks to go to price target wise?
Well,
So let's say a CleanSpark, Bitfarms, and IREN, if everything just goes as best it can in this cycle.
smoothly, conservatively, I think CleanSpark can get to like $60 still. IREN's like $60, $70. Bitfarms between $10 and $20. But if we go even higher in price in Bitcoin, we could go higher in those guys as well. But that's kind of if everything goes smoothly with them, where things should really be probably valuation wise for them.
Gotcha. And for CleanSpark itself, sorry, I didn't catch the number.
60.
60 is your target.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Now, Cypher is another one really interesting. We ran into Tyler Page down in Nashville. Actually, you were there as well,
Yep.
Sebastian, and got to talk to him, learned a lot more about the company. This is one that has the Black Pearl site coming online next year, tremendous power portfolio that we just talked about. Many of their sites are in development. They're not just a field with a gate or whatever.
Yep.
Do you own Cypher, and what do you think of them?
I do not own Cypher. I do think that they are doing the right things to get them going into the future, right? A lot of the growth, like you said, is going to be in 2025, possibly second half of 2025 into 2026. They do have a great portfolio of sites and megawatts, basically. So that's great. I would have liked to have seen them grown more here this year and into like the first half of next year as well, which was where we would see a lot of the gains in Bitcoin. But if it's going to be an extended cycle, this might actually play out pretty well for them if they're still building out in the end of 2025 and into 2026 as well. They could definitely catch that run there. And then historically, in the past, they were highly owned by Bitfury, if you recall, right? Bitfury owned like 70 some odd percent of the company there. There were some fears of them selling large portions. They did do that to them, where the stock was kind of held back because of it. But they fixed that all. They give out a lot of the shares to their other shareholders. So that's been resolved there, I think. And the stock has been doing much better here going forward because of it as well. So I think Cypher is going to do very well going forward. We'll just see how the cycle plays out.
What about HPC? This was another one. We were almost anticipating an announcement that weekend in Nashville. Where do you think they're at in terms of HPC?
I mean, I don't know. Mike Alfred there seems to think there might be something brewing for them along with TeraWulf. We'll see if anything happens for them. They do have sites potential, but what kind of deal is that going to be for them? Is it going to be a deal where maybe a big customer comes in, buys them out, or not buys them out, but buys out the site, or would they lease the site from them? So we'll have to wait on the details. But they do have the sites that are potential there.
Yeah, good analysis there. We have a few more questions coming in, Sebastian. What time are you good till?
I got another by maybe 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, we'll get maybe 3 more in here. This was a good question from Everton FC, and this is one a lot of people are actually asking me on Instagram that are not into Bitcoin. They've been watching my updates all through the year. They're saying, "Oh my God, I missed the boat." If I'm just getting into the mining space, what would you do?
If you're just getting into it now, dollar cost average as best as you can into some of the top miners here. I would diversify probably into the ones that are in HPCI plays as well, and just get diversified, because you really never know with any of these guys. It's always one press release away from a rocket ship for these things. That's all it really takes. So you might have the best one that you think that you're in, but somebody else gets a nice press release for whatever reason, and the stock goes crazy. So I think diversification does really help in here, and if you can get in earlier, that also helps.
Yeah, most definitely. Well said. Hey, I know you've only got a couple more minutes. We did have one question about non-public miners. I don't know if you cover any of these, Sebastian. I know in our experience, we've actually had a few non-publics reach out saying they're planning an IPO in the next 12 months. They'd like to be included kind of in our power mining analysis platform. I've seen a few of their decks. I know they are growing. We're not talking huge exahash, but a few exahash per miner for sure. Are there any that you're watching right now?
Not currently, no. As far as how they've been growing similar wise, I mean, we're seeing that the poly miners are still taking market share from other miners. around the world in general, because their market share is growing. They're like at 28% right now of the market share for hash rate. And we'll see how that comes out in December. But I'm still seeing a lot more growth from the publicly traded miners because they do have the capital to grow faster than some of the privates, which then are reliant on investments or just the operations that they bring in at that point. So it is a different dynamic there for them.
Yeah, makes sense. Good spot to end, Sebastian. I'll bring up the Miner Madness 2.0. Get your picks ready, you guys. Make sure you have those for January 10th is the kickoff date, Q1 2025. Either enter on yesterday's video on our channel or on the pinned tweet on our X account. Sebastian, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate the insights as always. I'll give you a minute or two to close out here, maybe with your most bold prediction for 2025 in the Bitcoin space.
Most bold prediction. Oh, Bitcoin gets to 300,000. Let's see if that happens in 2025. If we do that, that's going to be pretty bold, right? I don't know if it's going to happen, but let's just say that that's the case. Also, I just want to thank you and Anthony for doing this Miner Madness thing. This thing has been fun. It's been kind of frustrating at times looking at your positions like, what is going on? But it's been a lot of fun. So I really appreciate you guys doing that and doing that for the community. I think it's fantastic. So I just want to wish you and Anthony happy Christmas or Merry Christmas coming up, because I probably won't talk to you guys till then. And a Happy New Year to everyone.
Thanks so much. Yeah, happy holidays to everyone. Anthony was the mastermind behind Miner Madness, so we'll give him credit. That's fun. My whole basement, Sebastian, is filling up with mining gear.
I'm sure.
Bitfarms sent 10 mining rigs on a pallet, so we've got all types of prizing. You guys, make sure you sign up. Seb, thanks so much for being on here, buddy. All the best to your family and happy holidays.
Likewise, buddy. I'll see you next time.